Yeah.
And I don't think that the issue actually is because Dylan is either, whatever your view is, either as a trans person or as a Borat style character, as I've described it. I think the issue is more so that Dylan is particularly nails on a chalkboard to the average person. Mm-hmm. So a lot of beer companies have had drag queens and other pride ads that nobody batted an eye over. I think the issue is that Dylan Mulvaney as an individual is particularly grating and offensive.
Yeah, well, I know that conservatives really don't like Dylan Mulvaney. And look, I can understand some of the issues that people have with Dylan Mulvaney in particular. However, first of all, like if you talk to a lot of people, especially liberals, they don't even know who that is. The only reason I even know who Dylan Mulvaney is because there's this hugely disproportionate level of like attention being paid by conservative sort of pundits to Dylan Mulvaney, and a lot of it is sensationalism.
Dylan, I mean, as a woman, you don't think that he's particularly offensive? I mean, this is an individual who he really used that just as because he was getting attention and clout from this.
Well, a lot of
first
people
day being a woman, second day
clout.
being a woman, and he reduces being a woman to this ridiculous caricature.
Yeah, wearing high heels in the forest.
Yeah, I mean, I think Dylan in general is perhaps a little bit ridiculous. I don't feel offended personally. I do think Dylan is. I did find the girlhood part offensive. I did find the tampon part offensive.
But that's his. Part? Yeah, that's his whole shtick.
But I actually find the tampon part much more offensive, not from Dylan's point of view, but from the Tampax point of view. That Tampax would endorse someone like that because, well, it doesn't make sense. But I don't think it's necessarily like Dylan's fault in this case to accept this. I think it's the corporations that I would blame in this situation.
My response when you said a disproportionate amount of like right-wing pundits focus on Dylan Mulvaney. Dylan Mulvaney has like 13 million followers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And is getting big brand sponsorships from Nike. So if liberals, I think what you describe actually is fairly apt. Liberals don't pay attention. Mm-hmm. So you've got conservatives who are like, hey, something's not right here. And I can't speak to, obviously, if you look at Matt Walsh, for instance, his view is particularly conservative and right-wing, that, his view is Dylan represents trans people and this is bad and this is wrong. That is not my view. My view is that Dylan is creating a Borat-like character that insults women and trans people, is extremely grating to the average person, exemplified by the Bud Light effect, and is doing no favors to trans people or women, and is actually creating fuel for conservatives to, levy their ideological differences with transgender.
Well,
ideology.
I think he's.
Which is it? I don't know.
I know what I just said.
I will clarify. I don't believe that Dylan Mulvaney is trans.
Yeah.
Because trans people who are gender dysphoric don't sing about having giant bulges.
Yes, they're ashamed of it.
So we've had trans guests on the show. We have friends of the show, good friends of the show, people that we care about deeply who are trans, who have explained to us someone who's suffering from gender dysphoria, it's an anxiety, it's dysphoria, would not make a video to 10 million people singing, "Look at my penis," because that would be the most dysphoria-inducing thing you could do.
I think Dylan is perhaps confused. I cannot speak, I don't know Dylan. I don't know what goes on in Dylan's mind. I think Dylan could have all sorts of issues and confusion. So I don't know.
What? Oh, I don't know, whatever. Yeah. Sorry, continue.
So I don't know what is happening to Dylan. And I don't think Dylan is necessarily trying to do harm. I think Dylan is trying to figure out for themselves what is going on.
I think it's inherently harmful for women to pretend to be a woman out of nowhere for a TikTok algorithm, for clout, for followers. Because if you look at the history of Dylan's content, it wasn't this way. He was rewarded by an algorithm and by clout and by a following to pretend to be this ridiculous caricature.
But wouldn't you
us.
say that there is a general issue with people chasing clout in all sorts of arenas?
Absolutely.
This is just another example.
And the social contagion that has now grabbed Dylan is disproportionately harming women.
Yeah, I think so. If you look at, we went over this on the show. If you look at the earliest content from Dylan, it was like Animal Safari.
Yes.
And not getting that much traffic. Then Dylan made, being gay, got a little bit more views. Then made I'm non-binary, it got more views. Then came out as trans, millions of views. And the viewership really, really skyrocketed. What I see with a character like Mulvaney, and the reason why so many people on the right, obviously, I'll say this first. I think conservatives generally oppose gender ideology. They have concerns about exposing their children to people who are trans. They're conservatives, and conservatives have, held traditional values. For a lot of other people, they're just generally annoyed by Mulvaney. What I've heard from regular people, when I go out to like National Harbor in DC and I'm just hanging out and I'm talking with people either at like restaurants or in the harbor or whatever, what I typically hear, and to clarify, I'm talking about like 7 to 10 people. I'm not saying like I went and surveyed the world, just like hanging out with people who are in the area. They say disgust is typically how they describe their view of this person. I look at it like one of my biggest concerns has been artificial intelligence, algorithms, and how it's manipulating everybody. The rise of wokeness, to go back to that, I believe is specifically because Facebook incentivized keywords. So if you wrote an article that got clicks, Facebook would promote it if it was getting attention, simply put. So people, knowing that rage generates the most attention online, started making more and more content that was rage-inducing. So you start seeing more and more, around 2008, social justice issues skyrocket. It's because these companies are making money. And the best example is Mike.com. When they launched, they were a Ron Paul pro, like libertarian kind of thing. Within a few years, they were quote unquote woke, because that's what was generating traffic and revenue. That's what Dylan Mulvaney is. The earliest content was like animals in Safari. And then you notice that when Dylan starts entering the LGBT stuff, more and more views come in. So I think Dylan is more like Madonna.
So wouldn't you say that the content that's anti-Dylan is the same kind of thing? Because the content that is anti-Dylan does the exact same thing. It induces rage. It does really well on the clicks.
50-50.
Well, because to me, the things that harm women more, or the things that at least you could talk about more, that I think is fair game, that people can have legitimate issues with, is, for example, if we're going to talk about trans issues, is going to be more, children, if we're going to talk about school, not school, sports, prisons, spaces, regardless of what your views are on these things, I think those are at least legitimate topics to discuss. But when you start going on about, to me, like Dylan and things like that, to me, those are decoy topics, and those are rage and clickbait topics.
I don't believe so. I think he is the perfect example of what they're doing to erase women. You saw recently they want to call our female parts bonus holes now.
Why don't you talk about that then very specifically, as opposed to specifically just focusing on Dylan? Because to me, Dylan is a decoy again, and I think it's about rage and clickbait. Because if you put Dylan's name in it, that's what's going to generate the clicks, as opposed to talking about these very specific
Sure, there are going to be
issues.
people who use that because Dylan is popular, sure, but I still think it's a great topic because it's the perfect example of women being turned into this ridiculous caricature and being
It's
erased.
one person who is expressing themselves. I think Dylan is frankly just confused. Yes, Dylan is looking for attention. A lot of people in this world are looking for attention in all sorts of ways.
No, I think that's too kind to what Dylan's doing here, because Dylan is very aware that they're going on and pretending to be a woman and taking away deals and other things from, should I not say that?
Taking deals away from women?
Taking deals away from women, taking away opportunities from women, and putting himself into our space. He's taking that away.
I agree with you, actually, and I've talked about it quite a bit, that what I refer to as the Bud Light effect is two things. One, the obvious, big corporations are clearly getting scared that if they go anywhere near this stuff, they're going to lose money. So Target was like, hey, move that stuff to the back. Yeah. Starbucks claims they never told staffers to take decorations down, but the union saying at a bunch of different stores, they have videos of it. And you can watch the videos of them taking it down, saying we were told to. But the Bud Light effect is also that people will start to realize this is how you get viral. This is how you make money. So what'll end up happening is there's going to be some 17-year-old who has 1,000 followers, and they're going to think to themselves, I really wish I had 1 million followers. They're going to go on YouTube, they're going to go on TikTok, and they're going to see people are getting views from criticizing Dylan Mulvaney, and they will start to do the same thing. and they will get views. And not just Mulvaney, though. They'll talk about Bud Light. They'll talk about Target. They'll say, oh, yeah, look at me. I'm anti-woke, too. And their viewership will skyrocket.
There's a whole industry of being anti-woke. And what I've seen specifically, because in the beginning, when I was seeing some of the stuff going really insane, right? That was sort of the woke, what we've been calling sort of wokeness. There were all these people who kind of came out as being anti-woke warriors. But what I've witnessed is people getting really extreme themselves in how their rhetoric and how they attack it. And we've seen sort of the same people who were noticing the aggressive behavior. Like at this point, I've been called a Nazi by by both sides, right?
Yeah.
I want to go on the record and say that I am not a Nazi.
You don't have to. Though. I mean, it's ridiculous. Like,
No, I'm kidding. But that's the thing.
I would agree
are
that
used.
there's a rise in the people who are using anti-woke warriorness to
I think it's
garner
good.
following.
Good.
Yeah, I think it's
It's a
good
great
too.
thing.
That both are using this to garner a following?
I think it's absolutely fantastic.
How is that good?
That people are starting to see that by calling out wokeness, they can receive fame and virality and all that stuff. It's a fantastic thing.
How is
So-
that? Okay, this is what drives me kind of crazy because when I say, okay, you're doing the exact same thing as the people you were criticizing, and they say, well, look, we're just using your tactics against you now. You're getting a taste of your own medicine. And I say, okay, well, so you don't have any principles, basically. And they're
doesn't
saying,
make sense.
well,
What
we'll
tactics
get,
is it
we'll
that you
get
think-
principles when we win the war.
What tactics do you think
what-
are
what-
unprincipled from the anti-woke? Because for the most part, what I see on the anti-woke, I really think the word is overused, and I hate seeing certain people use it. It's overused. But what principles and tactics do you think are?
You treat people as individuals. You treat people fairly. You don't attack people unwarrantedly. You don't like call people names. You
I
don't
agree with those
cancel
things.
people.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
but
canceling
canceling-
is a fairly like nebulous. Like, what does that really mean?
well, people
when-
go after people for their livelihood. They attack people. So
Who?
one thing that I would get.
Who's getting a?
Well, I've even experienced
Mulvaney?
Mulvaney.
Easy.
Mul-
We're just
well-
talking about
Well,
that.
They're-
Mulvaney has only become more and more popular
Well,
because Mulvaney's also doing red carpets now.
But I
At
want to.
Target, there were people who were like, for example, there was harassment of employees that was happening. Now, I'll say on the reverse, like there were bomb threats that were happening when
real quick though,
the bomb
harassment of
threats were from the left.
No,
Yeah,
I know. I'm saying
Yeah.
on the reverse.
and the harassment of employees. We don't have proof of that. We just have like. Before there was any big like right-wing outrage over Target had experienced what they said was confrontations with staff. That's Target putting out an internal memo. We don't know exactly what that means. It could literally be a woman going, "Why are you doing this?" and then like walking away. So to say like beyond that, we don't know.
Well, there are videos around too of
people like destroying stuff. Like that's wrong.
destroying stuff. There are videos of people confronting. I'm not talking about necessarily Target because I haven't seen those necessarily videos, but I've seen other
But
videos.
I